There is a question that almost nobody wants to answer honestly, and that question is this: what if the life you are living right now is not the life you actually wanted? Not the life someone else planned, not the life the world expected, but the life that deep down in the quietest part of the mind was always meant to be lived. For most men over 50, that question hits different, because by 50, the road behind is longer than the road ahead, and somewhere along that road, choices were made, compromises were accepted, and doors were closed, quietly, one by one. But here's the thing that researchers studying the longest-lived people on the planet have discovered. The men and women who made it past 100, the ones who looked back on a century of living and still felt whole, they did not get there by accident. They got there because at some point in their lives, they stopped running from the truth and started running toward it. And today, the lessons they left behind are going to change the way of thinking about everything. So what exactly did people who lived past 100 actually figure out that everyone else missed? Researchers at Boston University have spent over 30 years studying centenarians through what is known as the New England Centenarian Study. And what they found was not what most people expected. It was not just about diet. It was not just about exercise. It was about something far deeper, something that most men over 50 have been ignoring their entire lives. And the first lesson, the one that hits the hardest, is this: relationships are not optional, they are survival. A recent survey of over 100 centenarians found that nearly 4 in 5 of them spent time with family or friends at least once a week, not once a month, not on holidays, every single week. And when asked what mattered most in their lives, relationships were the #1 answer, every single time. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable for a lot of men. The Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies in human history, tracked thousands of people over decades, and the conclusion was not complicated. Men who maintained strong social connections lived longer, were healthier, and reported significantly higher levels of happiness. On the other hand, men who let those connections fade, the ones who kept saying, "I will call him when things slow down," those men faced dramatically higher risks of heart disease, depression, and even dementia. So if a man over 50 is watching this right now, and there is someone, a friend, a brother, a father, someone that has not been called in months or years, that is not just an inconvenience, that is a warning sign. Now, before going any further, if this kind of content resonates, if lessons from the people who lived the longest are something that matters, then subscribing to this channel right now would mean a lot, because there is more of this coming, much more, and a subscription ensures none of it is missed. Back to the lessons from people who lived past 100. The second lesson is one that no one talks about enough, and it's about purpose. Centenarians around the world, from the mountains of Sardinia to the villages of Okinawa, share one thing in common that science keeps coming back to. They had a reason to wake up every single morning. Not a vague one, not "I have to go to work," a real one, a deep one, something that made the day feel like it mattered. Researchers call this a sense of purpose, and the data is not subtle about it. Studies published in journals of gerontology have consistently shown that men and women with a strong sense of meaning and direction in life not only live longer, but they delay the onset of age-related diseases by years, in some cases by decades. Now here's the painful part for men over 50. A 2016 survey of 3,000 Americans found that 38% of men admitted they wished they had taken more career risks. 29% said they would have started a business if they had the courage, and 35% said they spent their entire lives pursuing what was expected of them instead of what they actually wanted. Purpose is not something that just appears. It is built. It is chosen. And for the men who lived past 100, it was never something they outsourced to a job title or a salary. It was personal, something that made getting out of bed feel like an act of intention, not just routine. And that brings the conversation to the third lesson, the one that centenarians kept coming back to again and again, the one that science backs up with decades of evidence. Stress is not just uncomfortable. Unmanaged stress is a killer. The people who lived past 100 were not people who never faced hardship. Many of them lived through wars, through economic collapses, through loss that most people can't even imagine. But what set them apart was how they handled it. A survey from United Healthcare found that 36% of centenarians actively participated in stress relief activities, meditation, prayer, time in nature, or simply sitting in silence, not because it was trendy, because they learned over a lifetime that carrying everything inside eventually breaks something. And the research backs this up completely. Chronic stress has been linked to increased risks of cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, and accelerated cognitive decline. The body does not distinguish between the stress of a deadline and the stress of grief. It all registers the same way, and over time, it adds up. For men over 50, this is not about becoming someone who meditates every morning and drinks green tea. It's about acknowledging something that most men have been taught to ignore their entire lives, that emotions don't disappear when they are pushed down, they just find other ways to show up, in the body, in the relationships, in the quiet moments when no one else is watching. If the lessons from people who lived past 100 are landing right now, if there is even a small voice saying, "This applies to me," then hitting that like button would be a sign that this content is worth continuing to create. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps more than most people realize. Now, there is a fourth lesson from centenarians that researchers found particularly striking, and it has to do with how these long-lived individuals viewed time itself. On average, centenarians reported feeling about 32 years younger than their actual age. 32 years. A 103-year-old feeling like they were in their early 70s. A 105-year-old feeling like they were still in their mid-70s. How is that possible? Researchers believe it comes down to one thing: adaptability. The men and women who lived past 100 did not resist change. They moved with it. They learned new things. They stayed curious. They didn't let the world shrink around them just because it was getting harder to keep up. And here's what that means for men over 50 who are watching this right now. The biggest threat to a long, meaningful life is not age. It is not even poor health. The biggest threat is the decision to stop growing. The moment a man decides that everything worth knowing has already been learned, that is the moment the clock starts running faster than it needs to. The centenarians did not make that decision, and the men and women who did, statistically, did not last nearly as long. There is a fifth and final lesson from the people who lived past 100, and it is the quietest one, but it might be the most important. It is about regret. Not the kind of regret that comes from doing something wrong, the kind that comes from doing nothing at all. Research from Cornell University found that the regrets people carry deepest into old age are almost never about failures. They are about the things that were never tried, the calls that were never made, the words that were never spoken, the risks that were never taken because the moment never felt right. Men over 50 know this feeling. The friend who drifted away years ago, the conversation with a parent that kept getting pushed to next week, the version of life that was always almost started, but never quite was. The centenarians understood something about this that younger generations have not yet grasped. There is no perfect moment. There is no ideal condition. There is only right now. And right now is always shorter than it feels. So here is what all of this comes down to. The people who lived past 100 were not superhuman. They were not born with some secret genetic gift that made everything easier. Many of them faced devastation, loss, hardship that would have broken most people before they ever reached 60. But they made a choice, not once, over and over again. They chose to stay connected. They chose to find purpose. They chose to feel what needed to be felt instead of burying it. They chose to keep growing, and they chose to act instead of waiting for a better time that was never guaranteed to come. For every man over 50 watching this, the road ahead is not as long as it once was, but it is still there. And what gets built on it, what gets said, what gets done, that is still entirely up to the person walking it. The centenarians proved that it is never too late to matter. Not at 60, not at 70, not at 80, not ever. As long as there is breath, there is still time to make it count. So make it count. Call the person, say the thing, start the thing, feel the thing. Stop waiting for permission from a future that has never once been promised. The people who lived past 100 already told the world exactly what to do. Now it is time to listen. If this video changed even one thing about the way of looking at life, if it made the mind pause for even a second, then subscribing to this channel right now is the single best next step. More lessons like this are coming, and they are only going to get deeper. Subscribe. Share this with a man over 50 who needs to hear it, and do not wait until tomorrow, because tomorrow is the one thing no one ever truly gets to keep.